What, you think I'm above a thumbnail like that? Did you see the view count on the last video? Anyway. Hi, I'm Rigger, this is You're Right, and today we're looking at Catwoman Hunted, a DC animated original movie from this year. Honestly, it just turned up on my Netflix one day and I watched it because I thought why not, but it did lead me to an interesting line of thought for later, so stick with me. Catwoman Hunted from 2022 of course follows Selina Kyle as she steals the Cat's Eye Emerald from a costume party being held by Barbara Minerva. She is heading up the crime syndicate Leviathan, and the Cat's Eye Emerald is the entry fee for one Black Mask who wishes to join the organization. Right away, there's a lot to like here. In the opening credits we see what counts as backstory for this film, as it doesn't really have a particular canon. It is said to be adjacent to the Young Justice cartoon, but it's not sticking to anything really hard and fast. It is more just a one-shot. And what that backstory is a crayon-like animation showing Catwoman foil a plan in Sochi, which is about human trafficking, and she frees a group of women, which does a sufficient job of endearing her to us as the audience right away, so that's a positive. Plus, it does show off some of this sort of 60s styling that sort of rolls through this piece a bit. It's quite nice. But from those credits, we time skip forward to a party. A party held by this crime syndicate where the theme for dressing up in costume is superheroes, which is an odd choice, but we'll go with it. Selina arrives and infiltrates by catching the eye of Black Mask whilst wearing a throwback to one of her classic designs. All of this so far is fine. But here we start getting some of the cracks in this whole thing. One of the bigger problems for the piece actually is the dialogue. Starting out, it's not too bad, as Selina says some cheeky lines moving through the party.
Darling, I love your costume. Oof, hold on to that one, love, or I might just steal him away. Did you purchase that diamond, or just seduce it onto your finger? Oof, hold on to that one, love, or I might just steal her away.
These lines pretty much work. They establish her being catty and playful, which is very fitting, poking some fun, and also we are establishing up top that Catwoman is perfectly fine going after either men or women, and it will come up in the plot, so, I mean, it is getting people caught up if they're unaware, so far these little cheeky lines are okay. But immediately, I think most people can notice it's starting to sound pretty stilted. Even that last line there, which is sort of a punchline, it feels almost like a retake of the first line, just with him swapped out for her. It doesn't have the delivery almost like the joke it was intended. It feels a bit odd, especially because her dialogue cuts there, and then we move on.
Oof, hold on to that one, love, or I might just steal him away. Oof, hold on to that one, love, or I might just steal her away. Oof. Hold on to that one, love, or I might just steal him away.
As we go on, I think that there might have been some issues in the voice directing. I don't think it was the voice talent at all. And before you think I'm nitpicking, trust me, I'm not. This is the first of a very annoying trend of this movie in which everyone, but particularly Selina, has to get in the last one-liner in every single scene, and even midway through the scenes, she jams them in everywhere. It is constant. And usually it's only to herself, like no one else can hear it, but she has to get all the little lines in to the point where entire scenes will stop, just so she can say a line and then continue very awkwardly.
You know, I appreciate the classics, but I move with the times. A lady always accessorizes with care. The Cat's Eye Emerald. Darling, you're even more gorgeous in person. That perfect poem went south awfully fast. Remind me to lay a few choice words in the back the next time I see him. Clearly, this fool's never had a date in his life, or he'd know a woman can lay a man low with a single swish of her hips.
That happens multiple times in just that scene. But I'm getting ahead of myself. So, Selina changes to her usual gear and has another, again, quick little witty line that she's moving on with the times. Get it? We're out of the classic gear. DC is modern and hip, guys. So, with the help of her actual cat running around, a little bit of interference, she gets the security deactivated and gets inside. She does the usual daring cat burglar routine, before being thwarted by a mysterious batarang that sets off all the alarms. And no, we will never have an explanation of where that was thrown from inside the sealed giant vault that even the super thief had to go through the front door to get in. But anyway, chase ensues. But here is where the awkward really starts to kick in. Selina gets cornered in this crime party. So, what do you think happens? How? How are you missing? How? What? How are you missing everybody? What? This is not just Stormtrooper aim, this movie is G.I. Joe levels of actual magically bad aim. You think I'm joking? Well, the automatic gunfire into the crowd is not enough here because look what someone else brought to the party. And then, the awkward really starts because now we get clever with bringing back those hilarious lines.
Is this your guy? Hold on tight or I might just steal him away. Oh, I love your pearls. Might just steal those away too.
And also, why wasn't the last one the ring so she could actually steal it? Instead, she does this and doesn't even get the pearls, they all go everywhere. Is this really only here for a Martha reference? I legitimately thought she was going to take them and then throw them on the ground so people would trip over in a comical way, but no, she doesn't even do that. There's just nothing to it. Then, she just runs to the door, but not before.
I don't believe we've been properly introduced. The name's Selena Kyle, but please, call me Catwoman.
I know that Selena is perhaps not the most secretive with her identity of all those heroes in DC, but still, announcing your name to the room for no good reason can't be a good idea anyway. But okay, we've moved outside, we've got through the awkward party, we've got through the guns not hitting all the people that should be there. Surely this cleans up from here, right? No, I hope you like more awkward staging.
Cat's eye, meet cat's paw.
Your key, señorita!
You give it a key!
Sí, señor.
It's okay. I have a space.
Don't just stand there! Get him! The keys, damn it!
Sí, señor.
Mount up! Take all of them! You, drive!
Yes, sir.
Move! All of you! She's not getting away!
So that was just painful, right? But now we can enjoy the sick car chase. Yeah, it's awful, and just, I wish I could play all of these for you, because they're infuriating and awkward and edited like it was the first go through. There is so much of this that lacks impact and speed because every line has a solid second after it that could just be cut to speed up the pacing. But no, everything is sluggish and awkward and assembled together.
Pincer!
Did you just tell him to pinch me? That's really inappropriate, young man.
Not pinch her! Pincer! Pincer!
Oh, well, that's very different. Never mind.
Just do it!
Anyway, believe it or not, I did not just do this review to bad talk this movie, so we're just gonna keep going. Let's cut to the chase. Or rather, let's cut to after the chase. Catwoman almost gets away, but doesn't. She crashes and the thugs get the jewel back, and it is revealed Batwoman is the cause. She was the one that interfered with Selena, and she orchestrated it so that the thugs get the jewel back. Afterwards, Selena awakes in a luxury plane, said to be confiscated from the Penguin, and uses every single excuse she can find to pose on the bed. But I'm not being snotty, it's in character. Batwoman explains that she actually somehow put a liquid tracker, because that's a thing apparently, on the jewel and wants the bad guys to have it so they can track it to the leaders of Leviathan. Working in tandem with Interpol agents Julia Pennyworth, yes, the daughter of Alfred, and King Faraday, who is another DC person. They offer Selena to wipe her record clean, get all the warrants off her, in exchange for helping them with this espionage plot, which is pretty standard for this type of deal. You've seen it in a million movies and shows, but that's not a bad thing, it just gets us to where we're going. And yeah, ultimately Selena agrees to the terms. After this, the Interpol agents leave the plane. And after that, well, this is the scene that probably got you to click on the video. Being left alone on the plane and knowing Batwoman's identity, Catwoman makes a big show of flirting with her, of about to get into a bath. She invites Batwoman to watch, She approaches her seductively, she takes off Batwoman's mask, she drops her towel, and she gets about a millimeter from a kiss, and psych, nothing happens. Calm down, everybody. It was actually a ploy. She was stealing something from Batwoman's belt, she got a phone off her, and it has to be said, she completely outplayed Batwoman in this scene, who very quickly regains her composure, but shows a lot of vulnerability to this sort of thing, which is what it is, I guess. I don't know if that's 100% to character. I feel like it is. Or at least she's not great with the whole emotions thing, so it would get to her, but I'm not 100%, so correct me if I'm wrong. And look, it's no secret why scenes like this are here, but we'll talk about it later. Speaking of Batwoman...
Here it comes.
Wait,
Almost there.
I know that voice.
See? I knew you'd put it together.
Oh my god, it's Diaz.
I've only had Arlo for a day and a half, but if anything happened to him, I would kill everyone in this room and then myself.
What incredible casting, that's a fantastic choice.
Please. You knew it was me.
Looking it up, apparently she campaigned to play Batwoman live action after that show fell apart, and that's an incredibly good pick. I would pick her, that's great. But anyway, yes, Selina snatches a special bat phone. She exploits the fact that it's waterproof to hide it. However, for being such high tech, there's no security on that thing, huh? But here on the plane after that scene, we actually get some good stuff. Like, look at this real character moment.
Come on, Cat.
Don't call me Cat.
Wait, I can call you Selena, but I can't call you Cat, which is, in case you hadn't noticed, short for Catwoman.
Only he calls me Cat.
That may not go anywhere in this story, but it makes these characters in this world feel a bit lived in, and I appreciate that. From there, they go to parachute onto the building where the Leviathan meeting is being held, having tracked the stone. And then they do this.
Try these instead. I think you'll like them.
Oh, wow! You were right. I like the goggles.
Now, those goggles never come back, and there's even a scene later where Batwoman finds Catwoman after they've split up in a non-explained way, and I was expecting the answer, oh, there's a tracker in those goggles I gave you, by the way. Which would make a lot of sense, especially since they weren't trusting that Catwoman would stay on mission here, but it just doesn't come up. So from there, they go and they land on the building. And also...
I'm very glad you're having fun. Press the button on the side of the goggles.
I could do that, but now that I'm out of the plane, what makes you think I'm not gonna bail on this whole endeavor?
Well, I have your cat.
Pressing button.
Okay, that was funny. But we see inside where Leviathan is meeting, and I'm not going to run through all the villains there, but there's some notable villains here from the extended DC universe. The bulk of this scene gets taken up with Catwoman fighting Cheshire on the roof, who's been hired to kill her, but that's when stuff like this happens.
Jellyfish toxin.
Yeah, you used that on me last time. Since then, I made sure to build up an immunity.
So, lines like that I'm in two minds about. Yes, it does make the characters feel lived in because they do know each other, and I do like that about these movies, that despite not taking place necessarily within a strict canon, they all operate as if the audience somewhat at least passingly knows these characters, or if they don't, you get enough about them to sort of get the main idea. And in universe, the characters do know each other and have met before. However, this does kind of reek of some of that both anime and superhero thing that is doubled up when they're combined, which is the everyone has to be awesome, so they always have to outdo and one-up each other, so they've all come up with something crazy to outdo the other one beforehand that they could have no way of knowing about, and then sometimes that person has a counter to that and a counter to that, you get the point. Here's another example from later that feels very unnecessary.
Trained in the art of the katana by sensei who studied with the great Lady Shiva.
Trained in the art of the katana by the great Lady Shiva herself.
Oh crap.
Both of these things just feel like it reeks of we need everyone to feel awesome. Like, do you actually see Selina Kyle sitting around at home, taking doses of his venom to build up an immunity, assuming that actually works, spending the money to get it and going through all that pain over and over, just in case this scenario pops up again, and it might happen? I could see Batman doing that, but not Selina Kyle doing that. Just in character, it doesn't sit right with me. Maybe I'm wrong and it's just a passing line, but it just sort of stuck out. Here's where we get Batwoman joining the fight, and Cheshire calls in Nosferatu as additional help too. Get it? It's a cat and a bat versus a cat and a bat. And I have to say, when I was doing a little research about this movie after the fact to decide if I wanted to review it or not, I looked at some of the user reviews on like IMDb. I'm not going to scroll through and find the specific one, but I found many along the same lines with a lot of criticism about how, of course, because it's a female-led plot, they can just win everything. And of course, these two take down these classic villains, they shouldn't be able to. Lots of very agenda-driven stuff, or accusing this movie of being very agenda-driven. I saw a lot of people criticizing the, like, titillation scene before as being there specifically to cater to the LGBT audience in a way that they portrayed as negative, despite the fact that thing is clearly there to be gawked at by people rather than be representation, but whatever. But this one specific one I saw just said how it was so pointless because they took down every threat with ease. That is so not true. My biggest criticism here is that Batwoman especially gets her ass handed to her every single second, and she gets outplayed by everyone. For someone who comes in trying to be cool, she gets completely taken advantage of by Selina and loses that encounter. She gets almost totally whooped in this fight, and you'll see that as we go on, she either doesn't do much or disappears. For being an anime-inspired thing, they actually do lack the anime fights. It could have done a lot better with all of that, especially for our main characters. But either way, after a pretty sloppy fight, they all fall through the roof and into the base. Now, I think that those reviews saying that there's no way they should be able to take down these people, and of course, you know, it's agendas and all that, they can take on these enemies, I'm very much not on board with that. These enemies aren't crazy, they're not fighting Darkseid or something, but I will say what happens next is pretty dumb, because they fall through the roof and they land in the middle of these villains, and these villains are pretty serious. But I was waiting for the trick or something to help them out here, because clearly they are very much in a bad place right now, and nothing does. They don't die because of convenience and because the movie doesn't want them to die. Here's what should happen. And here's what actually happens.
Kill them both.
We should.
Way ahead of you.
Again, I have no problem with them being able to fight these guys, but in that outnumbered scenario, it was not done very well. They needed to put more effort into the staging and more effort into the script to make it enjoyable when they fight these people and not just live because of convenience. I'm down with them winning, but show me a cool way they win. And look, eventually backup does arrive, but it's way too late. But anyway, eventually they dispatch the bad guys, except the big bad, she gets away. They conclude business and part ways. Selina is then off on her own, contemplating a necklace she stole, and of course, while sitting around thinking, ninjas attack, because the League of Shadows is not forgiving. It's at this point where Batwoman again just shows up. This is when it would have helped to say how she found her, but don't worry about it. And instead, they do this very overplayed and really annoying thing now of the Legolas and Gimli counting thing where they compete to see who can take out more bad guys.
Can you handle the extra?
Please, I'm so getting more than you.
And it goes on.
4. Oh, why don't you just admit 5, 6,
And on.
9, 10, 11.
And on.
You'll never beat me at this rate. 15, 12, 13, 14, 15.
That really wasn't needed, and that's their, like, cool team-up thing for the movie. From there, though, things look to be getting cool, because then...
Solomon Grundy, born on a Monday.
It's Solomon Grundy! Solomon Grundy is awesome. I have waited for ages for a good use of him in a movie. So, let's see what they're gonna do with this near unstoppable badass. Well, okay, I have no problem with this being the answer, but it's rushed to so quickly. Why did you make this Solomon Grundy? Solomon Grundy deserves better. If he was going to be killed off this quick, or handled this quick, I should say. He's not dead. He doesn't die. It's kind of his thing. But it should have just been like a henchman in a mech suit or something if you were going to dispatch him in like less than a minute. But that's all the henchmen out of the way. It's time for the big showdown. But don't worry, Selina's got this. Her opponent's just a big puss.
Oh, cat fight?
Big cat fight.
Yeah, this was an ongoing joke in this whole movie about the cat motif and theme.
Cat fight?
Cat fight.
Lots of people joke about it to Selena, and then the multiple cat characters bring it up. Which on one hand, I get, but it does get a little too meta at some points. This movie has trouble balancing its meta jokes to the audience and just good humor between the characters in the world. Because some jokes like this are fun.
It's 2 against 1.
3 against 1. Okay, 2 against 1.
And other ones like this are pretty cringy.
Don't you ever get tired of all that cat shtick?
Seriously? Do you really want to get into a shtick war, Batwoman?
Also, for this final battle, Batwoman is just kind of gone, and then she doesn't show up in the ending battle at all except to pull off a dramatic save at the end. And speaking of that dramatic save, she only gets Catwoman because... ooh, that's brutal. I'm surprised that they went there and... Oh, she's not dead, because she can't die because reasons, even though she looks really dead. Of course, that is another issue that comes with a lot of superhero movies in general, is that this movie doesn't know what it wants to be with violence. So many people avoid death for no reason, even people we don't care about. But then, there'll be one moment of cold killing, like Black Mask killing his henchman here. And despite being out of continuity, so it doesn't really matter what happens, it's a slave to the need to keep the status quo. So actual named people can't die, which really declaws the tension in these plots. But, okay, look, wrapping up, they part ways, they take the bad guys to jail. Turns out Talia al Ghul is actually the bigger bad because she's with the League of Shadows and she was behind Leviathan. Catwoman hints at the next adventure and shows she's now in possession of the Cat's Eye again, and she can use that money to help out the girls who she rescued in the opening credits and wear out. So here's the deal. This isn't good, and it's not terrible either. But that's not why I decided to review this. Why am I picking at it? It doesn't seem exceptionally good or bad, even in a super entertaining way, but I think it has a lot to offer. I like watching these every now and then, these DC animated films, but compare this one to some of the others. Many of these films in the animated DCEU have huge casts and lots of big heroes and villains and superpowers. They go underwater to Atlantis and in space, and there's gigantic forces at work. Stuff that if you took to live action would cost many hundreds of millions of dollars to CG it all and make it look right. It would be ridiculous, let alone all the casting you would have to do, especially for such big, iconic named roles. That's why these animated ones stick to the cheaper model of paying good voice talent and then let the animation handle the destruction. And that's fine and all, but look at this one. I have a big question. Why was this animated? Honestly, why? Here's the thing, the actual answer to that is DC is trying to make billion-dollar movies only and are in a lot of trouble because of it. They aren't Marvel and hate that they aren't Marvel and have spent years trying to catch up to Marvel and failing horribly. They have their gigantic movies that are so huge they collapse in on themselves when they try and do it all at once. Then they have some of their good standalone movies, but all of them are such massive productions with such huge amounts of money. And then they have their TV, which frequently don't do very well and are constantly falling apart. And then they have these on the side, these little animated films. And watching this movie, I came to realize that this movie right here held so much promise because if DC was not so scared to work on a smaller film, and they were actually willing to experiment and play with some of their universe, this could have been great as an actual live-action film. If you bumped up this runtime to say 2 hours, so you could put in a little more character work and flesh everyone out a little bit more, this could have been really great as a medium-sized movie. But they refuse to make those. There is no medium-sized movies anymore. It's gangbusters or nothing. Every superhero has to be some gigantic A-list name. And obviously to work against this idea for this one, we do have a new Catwoman now. But watching this, I couldn't help but feel in the modern day, with modern audiences who are more savvy to non-canon material and expanded universe stuff and alternate universe stuff and multiverses, you really could have done something in live action with stuff like this, even if you had a second new Catwoman on a smaller scale. Focusing on leads who aren't superpowered, this really could have been a good little movie. Like, this car chase sucked. But in live action, this would have been much better, and car chases are super difficult to do in animation. The mark of a fantastic animated show is when they can get something like a car chase right. That's just how it is. But in live action, that's much less of a problem. But look at the rest of this movie. The planes are just planes. You don't need specially built planes. There's no super crazy gadgets. You only need CG for Cheetah, Grundy, the demons, and the mech people, and Nosferatu, which is a lot, but we don't need them all. Nosferatu is useless. She can be kicked out, that's fine. Write a different villain instead of Lodama if you don't want the two demons, although we still could probably get them anyway because CG is reasonably good these days anyway. And then it's just Cheetah and Grundy. Everyone else are just thugs with guns. Personally, I'd want to keep Grundy. You could technically get him out too, but I want to see him done in live action. I think he could be great. But this is all rewritable while keeping the same basic plot. The basis of Catwoman pulls off this burglary, meets up with Batwoman, and they team up against a supervillain crime syndicate. This would be really fun. Look at the casting for Batwoman, it is perfect for live action. Stephanie Beatriz shouldn't just be on voice, which is no shot at voice actors, but she is an on-screen presence and has a fantastic one. She should be doing this on screen, especially since the Batwoman streaming show has now completely fallen apart. As for continuity, A, who cares, and B, are people really going to be super upset that you disgrace the good name of Cheetah in the movies? Really? The only one I can really see is that they might not want two active Catwomen, but even then, this style of film would be perfect for a Batwoman film. It doesn't need the animation to cover it for extreme superpowers and destruction. That would be so expensive to do otherwise. If you made a movie like that, rather than constantly trying and failing to launch these big, gigantic streaming shows that fall apart and half the people don't watch, then you could do a lot more to grab an audience. Put Stephanie Beatriz in a medium-sized Batwoman role like this in a movie, and if it takes off, you make more. Or you use the hype from the film to then launch the show afterwards after you've already culminated an audience with something cool. Rather than burying characters you might know halfway through a season most people aren't going to watch, put some of these fun side characters in the movie in a way that people might get attached to and want to see more of, and maybe they can have their own shows or spin-off things once people are actually interested. Especially if you operate like these movies without giving everyone a total backstory. Sure, in an actual film you could probably touch up on it a bit more, flesh out some more of the main people, but it doesn't have to be a damn origin story all the time. In today's world, if you want to compete in the modern streaming TV show market, you're looking at hour-long episodes with gigantic budgets anyway. So you might as well just make it a movie if you're trying to do these one-offs and actually launch something. Something that makes a big splash in one sitting. Or if you're so against that, what if you marketed it as a group of part of a series of movies? Like an episode of an Elseworlds little movie series you're launching under one banner. Call it one-shots. Launch DC one-shots films and just make these live action, put a little more effort into them, and see what people pick up on and like, and then you can start building your universes from there if you have to. Just see what lands. Just make cool action movies with these fun characters and see what works. And that especially applies if they let themselves lean into some of the strengths of not being Marvel. All the DC movies like to be dark, but they're dark in the edgy teen way, rather than doing more with being adult. Rather than being dark DC, they could be adult DC, which is slightly less niche. The Batman property has not been for children in a long time cinematically. Why not lean into it, but go a little further? If you launched a Catwoman or Batwoman movie with crime bosses, guns, people getting straight up shot dead and blood, and they're cool, but hey, also take a cue from these things and lean into things like sexuality. Say what you want, but sex sells. It's not the Marvel way, it's not even the classic superhero way, and you don't have to be so sleazy about it, but it could be part of the DC way. Blood, sex, and violence aren't bad things, especially if it sets you apart. Rather than just slow and hard to see. If you want eyes on your product, I mean, there are worse ways to do it. Plus, even if you start with that as a foundation, you could put some effort in and turn those sexual tones into actual story and plot people care about, and actual representation too, if you put the time in. Sure, leveraging it initially for mostly the male gaze is not the most honourable way to do it, but it could kickstart something you can then do more with, or use that angle to get people into the movie and then establish in a sequel or series later things that further flesh it out. Just get people in the door. I don't know why they're so reluctant to use everything they have in their arsenal, and titillation can be one of those things, violence can be one of those things, but they're so intent on just being dark and edgy that they are unwilling to explore the rest of what they could do with actually having their rating up a little higher, and being the alternative to Marvel that they would like to market themselves as, but don't really provide. My point is this, DC is struggling, they keep needing the billion-dollar movies to succeed, but everything underneath that, everything that builds their reputation and builds their brand, are failing heavily. So when they take these gigantic swings and miss, they have very little to fall back on. But if you actually put in some effort and produce some things that were lower budget, with a higher rating and for adults, that actually was the alternative, you could actually carve out a good niche for yourself that isn't being consistently provided for. Because almost no matter how you look at it, if you made a movie like this, and you were willing to put that rating up, perhaps even into nudity and some gore, which is outside the realm of what you usually do, but hey, just do it, you would certainly get a lot of people in the door. Some would be there to see something different, some would be there to see something that they aren't seeing elsewhere, and some would be there to see if you crash and burn, but it's more eyes on your product. But you're already crashing and burning anyway, so why not? Plus, this movie has some things that really only appeal to older people anyway, like this jazzy soundtrack isn't really for most kids, and these throwback classic vibes provide for an audience that isn't getting provided to elsewhere. There's lots of hooks here to get people watching. If DC came out and said, hey, we're doing this female-led, LGBT-friendly, hot and steamy superhero movie with bloody gunfights, car chases, and monsters that has a funky soundtrack and pays homage to some classics you recognize, well, people would be there to see it. And also saying, hey, here's some characters you've never thought would see the screen, we're putting them there. Well, you'd certainly get a response of some kind, which is better than nothing. It might just be worth a try. DC may be trailing very far behind, but maybe, just maybe, if they were willing to take a risk, they might not be out of 9 lives just yet. And despite it not being the best film certainly on its own, I think perhaps Catwoman Hunted actually might hold the key of inspiration for what that could actually look like. Now I guess we'll just wait and see if DC burgles this idea off me. Until next time, my name is Rigger, hope you have a wonderful day, and I hope I did alright.